Oh, hello. Welcome to the 2013 Hundie Challenge. Today we're going to be discussing Son of a Sailor by Lawrence Fishburne. Dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo-doo, dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo. Well, I was surprised and impressed by Sons and Lovers. It started out as a very sort of, generic's not the right term, but it was a very familiar sort of a pastoral ode to the working class man of a century ago. I was intrigued that it was written in 1913, so it was almost written like to be reviewed today, like what was life like a century ago and how does it compare today. One of the things I've been really excited about learning in this trip to reading 100 great novels is how very similar all the time periods that these different novels are written in to today and to one another, to the kind of the universal human needs, that we kind of have this opinion of the 50s as being a certain level of button down, and then On the Road kind of explodes that, and we have a theory about the early part of this century, the end of the Victorian era in England as being very prudish, and Sons and Lovers kind of explodes that and analyzes that. But like I said, the very beginning was basically about this miner, Walter Morrill, who through the bulk of the book is called just Morrill, until towards the end he starts being called just the father. Like this is right at the end when his, second to youngest son, Paul, grows up. Then Paul starts being called Morrill, almost as though he has become the new man in the family. Although it's kind of suggested throughout that Walter Morrill, the elder, was never really the man of the family, that his wife was always really in charge of the family. And he was just kind of this oafish lout. And I've talked before in this series, especially regarding The Sound and the Fury and the Go Tell It on the Mountain, about how I feel about writing dialects and really like mangling the English language to express something that it doesn't need to be mangled that strongly for. This happens in Sons and Lovers as well, particularly in the working class miner Walter Morrill, the father of the book. He's very, I guess it's not really a Cockney accent, but he's got a very lower class, difficult to kind of understand brogue. I guess they live somewhere between London and Scotland, so it's considered a kind of somewhere in between the Cockney and the Scottish brogue. Other characters speak in differing levels of this brogue at different times, and the ones that are, well, no one's really upper class. They're all kind of lower class, but some of them start to reach up into the middle class and that sort of thing, and put on airs and talk less and less so in this sort of, like they, instead of saying I shall, they say I shall. And there's some words that aren't necessarily words that I'm familiar with, like nesh, which I think means you're susceptible to being cold, and some other words like that. So the father is this very lower class brute, and almost from their wedding day, the mother and the father cease to have any love in their relationship. It's not so much that it's a sham as we would consider it today. It's just they're just stuck. And so it's what starts out as seeming like just kind of a pastoral in the early chapters transforms into this analysis of a loveless marriage. And even though the father seems like a stereotype, Walter, usually just called Morrill, he's a buffoon, but he's got these dimensions as a buffoon, if that makes sense. He's not just always pictured as the villainous ruffian. It sort of shows how he feels overwhelmed by life, and all he really wants to do is, go out and have a beer now and then, and he just doesn't know how to handle having this family. And the mother kind of starts to take over all the business of the household to the point where he's infantilized, and he's less of a member of the family than the sons and the daughters that come in later. I've already been talking for a while about the early chapters, but suffice it to say that when the sons start to get involved, and there's two primary sons, which is William, the older son, who, spoiler alert, again, it's a century-old book, but whatever, spoiler alert, William dies, and he was the one that was looking to be the best off. He had moved to London, he had found a really well-paying job, and just kind of this horrible wife, or fiance rather, that looked to prove like she was going to be kind of the female version of Walter Morrill, the father, that she was just kind of vapid and would not make a good partner for a lifetime together. So he dies, and everyone kind of feels that loss. And then, almost out of nowhere, not quite halfway through the book, maybe a quarter of the way through the book, the younger son, there's another younger son, which is Arthur, but I guess the middle son, Paul, starts to change into the main character. And what I found interesting was the really strong and disturbing incestuous overtones between Paul and his mother. It was kind of fascinating. It was one of the most Oedipal relationships since Oedipus. It almost made me think, and I might be looking too much into this because it's probably not the case, but I almost wonder about the title, if the sons and the lovers is the same thing. Because although, yes, there are sons and lovers, there's Paul, there's William, there's Arthur that are the sons, and there's Clara and Miriam and the gypsy that are the lovers, but I almost wonder if it isn't a sort of a very subtle hint of the incestuous undertones, although it's never made explicit. It's very much an undertone in the book between Paul and his mother. Oh, as in, oh, this is my son and my lover. So they're my sons and lovers. But again, that's just it's very subtle. But the unhealthiness of the relationship is very much a part of the text. I can't imagine that this was healthy even in 1913. The level of kind of disturbing familiarity with his mother, which I guess is because he was taking over the role of his father, who was an absentee member of the family. Although he wasn't absentee, he was physically present. He had no role in the family. He was like a baby, Walter. So Paul kind of stepped in, and his relationship with his mother began to affect his life. For a long portion of the novel, he refused to have anything to do with other women because he didn't want them to encroach on his relationship with his mother. And then when he finally does start sleeping with women, and again, very explicit for 1913, very explicit sex scenes, I would say, he has trouble relating with them and can't stay with them because he doesn't want them to affect his relationship with his mother, who he puts as primary. Finally, when the mother dies at the end of the novel, I guess the implication is now Paul can go on and be a whole person, maybe, and if he's the D.H. Lawrence surrogate, as he almost certainly is, he'll go on and be a successful painter. He was a painter rather than an author. So overall, kind of fascinating book, several fascinating, interesting relationships, and a really careful, close analysis of a very unhealthy mother and son relationship. But definitely check it out. Had surprising depth. So thanks for tuning in. Next time we'll be looking at Farewell to Arms.